Congratulations on your baby. Here's a gift. Even Lucy, who usually picks on me, gave me a present after I was discharged from the hospital after giving birth. The moment I saw what was inside, an overwhelming rage surged in my heart, and before I knew it, I had thrown the gift into the trash can.
That's so mean.
Lucy started fake crying loudly so that the family in the other room could hear. Hearing the commotion, Robert and others hurried over. What happened? In response to Robert's question, Lucy pleaded with a theatrical act to gain sympathy.
Seems like Catherine didn't like the baby gift I gave her.
Robert was shocked and said,
You shouldn't throw it away right in front of her. Apologize to her now.
I managed to utter with a trembling voice. Did you check what's inside? Picking the gift from the trash and opening the box, Robert was at a loss for words. It was evident how quickly the usually calm man became furious.
Lucy, why would you give something like this? Depending on the situation, I might have to reconsider our relationship.
Neither I nor Robert would probably ever forgive Lucy for this nonverbal insult. My name is Catherine Smith. Although I'm now just a regular homemaker, I actually grew up in a foster care. My parents left me just after I was born, disappearing from the hospital. I've heard that some foster cares can be bad, but the one I was raised in had no bullying, and I grew up with love from the caretakers there. Still, I've always longed for a typical family since childhood. I wanted to become a mother someday and build a happy home. That desire was probably stronger in me than in most. But what plunged me into despair was the words of a doctor I visited due to irregular periods when I was a high school student.
You have an STD virus.
I couldn't believe my ears. I had never engaged in any activities that would lead to such an infection. The doctor continued.
There's a high chance it's a mother-to-child transmission. Even though you have the virus, you haven't shown symptoms. There's also a chance you'll never show symptoms in your lifetime.
I was so anxious that I asked the doctor.
But if there's a risk of mother-to-child transmission, does that mean I can't have children?
So the doctor responded.
If you raise the child on formula instead of breast milk, the risk of mother-to-child transmission is greatly reduced. You don't have to give up on having children.
I was relieved by the doctor's words, but I felt sad knowing that in many obstetric clinics, breastfeeding is recommended. I wanted to breastfeed my baby too. I began to think that no man would ever want to marry someone like me and start a family. In my despair, I completely gave up on the idea of romance. After graduating from high school, I got a job as a secretary and dedicated my evenings to study for improving my skills. I had locked away my desires for love and marriage deep inside my heart. Even when men showed interest in me, I couldn't bring myself to date them, thinking that marriage would be impossible anyway. A few years later, I met Robert at my workplace. He's a wonderful person who put me at ease just by being around. Robert's kindness slowly melted my guarded heart. When he asked me to start our relationship, I told him about being a carrier of an STD virus. But Robert said, As long as Catherine's with me, that's all that matters. If Catherine wants children, I want them too. Let's face this together. We eventually got married. When we visited his family to introduce ourselves, I confessed about the virus I carry. My mother-in-law was understanding and supportive. Robert chose you. I'm here to support. If you need help, don't hesitate to ask. However, Lucy, Robert's sister, was different. Lucy, who had a past relationship and breakup with a man who grew up in foster care, held a prejudice against those from similar backgrounds. Hence, she couldn't hide her hatred knowing that I grew up in foster care. Yet, Lucy was cunning. She never showed any hostility towards me in front of the family. In fact, she acted like the kindest sister-in-law one could ask for. In the family's living room, Lucy said to me,
I always wanted a sister. I'm so glad. Let's have coffee and go shopping together. I can't wait to do it with you.
Lucy's husband is a businessman, and Lucy is a stay-at-home wife living in a high-rise condo. They don't have children, and she's a fashionable lady adorned with expensive clothes and jewelry. I felt over the moon, as if I had finally gained a real sister. Later, when I stood up to use the restroom, Lucy was like, I'll show you the way. And we both left the living room. It was right after that when Lucy changed completely. Her face, which was gentle until then, turned totally different and she looked at me with fierce eyes.
Why on earth did someone like you, coming out from an orphanage, become part of our family. How did you manage to get close to Robert? You've got some nerve.
I was taken aback, feeling like a bucket of cold water had been thrown on me, too stunned to even respond. After getting married, Robert and I rented a house near his parents' place and started visiting them several times a month for meals. My mother-in-law is as calm and kind as Robert, and we've established a good relationship. Meeting her became one of the joys of my life. However, I always felt down whenever Lucy happened to visit on the same day. Lucy continued to intimidate me only when we were alone. She had countless petty criticisms, like how I did the housework or how my fashion sense was outdated. In front of the family, she'd always put on the facade of a shining, kind sister-in-law. This discrepancy tore at me, leaving me unsure how to deal with my feelings. Robert only knew Lucy's gentle and beautiful side and always talked highly of her whenever they met. To my mother-in-law, Lucy, with her beauty and education, seemed to be the pride and joy. I yearned for the warm family atmosphere that was present there. I felt included when both my mother-in-law and Robert were around. If I could just endure it, everything would be fine. That's what I kept telling myself. Because of me, Lucy turned into a devil. I couldn't disrupt this warm family environment. So, I couldn't even tell Robert, the person I trust the most, about the hurtful things Lucy said to me. When I became pregnant, Lucy's bullying became even more intense. That day, Robert went out shopping, and my mother-in-law was cooking in the kitchen. I was told to sit and rest due to my pregnancy, but I wanted to strengthen my muscles for childbirth, so I asked if I could clean the living room floor. That's when Lucy appeared. Lucy sat on the sofa, looking down at me cleaning, and said, "You have an STD, don't you? It's so sad for the baby if it gets transmitted. If you follow the doctor's advice and use formula feeding, the risk of transmission from mother to child can be greatly reduced." I tried to explain that, but Lucy didn't want to hear it. My mom and Robert are too trusting. They probably believed whatever story you told them. But I'm not gonna fall for your lies. People like you, who grew up in orphanage, are always liars. I had to defend myself against that. Just because by chance, your ex-boyfriend happened to be a liar, doesn't mean everyone from foster care is like that. And calling someone from orphanage sounds discriminatory, you know? Then something shocking happened. Suddenly, Lucy started crying out loud. Caught completely off guard, I was left standing in shock. Immediately, my mother-in-law came rushing out of the kitchen. "What happened?" asked my mother-in-law, to which Lucy replied through her sobs. "It's okay. It's nothing. It's all my fault. Just like Catherine said, I just have a bad track record with men." My mother-in-law, with a knowing look, spoke to me a bit sternly. "So, you brought up Lucy's ex-boyfriend, right? That guy was truly awful. Even now, it's a trauma for Lucy. Could you please not touch on that topic?" Robert's gentle-natured his mother had a look on her face that I had never seen before. I felt an urge to explain the truth, but seeing Lucy sobbing next to my mother-in-law, I held back. Even though she was originally at fault, if I brought up her trauma, I felt I was also to blame. "I'm sorry. I'm glad you understand. Catherine didn't know after all. I know that Catherine wouldn't intentionally hurt Lucy." With that, my mother-in-law returned to the kitchen. But then, Lucy, who was just sobbing a moment ago, smirked at me. "You see what happens when you go against me? I have the upper hand in this house." I felt a mix of fear and anger that left me speechless. But right now, there wasn't much I could do but clench my fists. When Robert returned from the store and heard about what happened, he seemed to sense something was off. After returning from my in-laws' home, Robert asked me, "I just can't believe that someone as considerate as you would say something so insensitive to Lucy. What really happened? Are you holding back something?" I swallowed hard, holding back the words on the tip of my tongue. If I exposed Lucy's bullying now, Robert would probably believe me. But I wonder about my mother-in-law. If a daughter and daughter-in-law's stories conflict, wouldn't a mother naturally believe her daughter? It might strain my relationship with my mother-in-law, and Robert might get troubled too. I was afraid of ruining the good relationship I currently had with my mother-in-law. No, really, it was my bad. I overstepped. I feel really bad for what I did to Lucy. Robert was like, "Well, as long as you are fine." Looking at me with concern but didn't press the matter further. It seemed like he sensed there was something I was hiding, but he respected my choice to stay silent. I felt really blessed to have such a wonderful husband and wanted to cherish this happiness. A few months later, I had a scheduled C-section, and our baby was born. A cute little boy. Robert and I were both moved to tears. Because of hospital rules, only the husband was allowed to visit. So, my mother-in-law met her first grandchild when I was discharged. My mother-in-law came to pick us up in her car.
He's so adorable. He looks just like Robert when he was a baby. But he has your eyes, Catherine. He's gonna be a heartbreaker.
After being discharged, I stayed at my in-laws' place. My mother-in-law was like, "You just focus on the baby. Don't worry about anything else." She took care of all the other household chores. Given that I couldn't return to my own family for postnatal care, my mother-in-law seemed like an angel to me. But then, the woman who would throw me back into hell arrived at the house. Needless to say, it was Lucy. That day, Lucy brought her husband home with her. Lucy's husband, Tom, being a businessman, was tall and seemed very assertive, and he looked perfect next to the beautiful Lucy. However, he didn't smile once, which was a bit off-putting. Surrounding our baby and me at the dining table were my mother-in-law, Lucy, Robert, and Tom. That day, we were gonna enjoy a feast that my mother-in-law had put her heart and soul into. Lucy, with a big smile, handed me a large gift box.
Here, a gift to celebrate the birth.
It was from a luxury baby store, way out of my price range. Lucy looked a bit embarrassed as she said, "I'm not sure about my taste, and I'm kinda shy. Can you open it in the next room and tell me what you think, just between us?"
Wow, trust Lucy to think of everything. Thank you. If it's from you, it's gotta be good.
Robert cheered. I had a bad feeling, but I didn't want to ruin the mood, so I put on a smile and thanked her. "Thank you, Lucy." It was the last time I would smile at Lucy in my life. As I moved to the next room, Lucy, who was walking ahead of me, suddenly turned to face me. Usually, she has a sour look, like she's unhappy, but she was oddly cheerful and grinning.
You probably don't often get gifts from a classy lady like me, right? You should be grateful. Come on, open it.
Lucy urged me like that. Swallowing hard, I looked at the box with the logo of a high-end children's store. The box, adorned with a neat blue ribbon, seemed to contain a quality gift. Taking a deep breath, I untied the ribbon and opened the box, only to let out a sharp gasp. I felt my knees, my arms, shaking uncontrollably. It was rage. Had I ever felt such strong resentment before? Lucy laughed leisurely and said,
"Any decent mother would use this, right? If she's decent, that is."
The next moment, I threw the present hard into the trash. I threw it so forcefully that the trash can toppled over, scattering garbage on the floor. Yet, the trembling throughout my body didn't stop. I glared fiercely at Lucy. And yelled, losing my composure.
"What kind of person are you? That's so mean. After I put so much thought into picking it out."
Lucy countered with a faint crying voice. Hearing the shouting from the next room, my mother-in-law, Tom, and Robert, holding our baby, rushed in to see what was happening.
"What's going on here?"
Lucy, tears streaming down her face, said to my loud mother-in-law.
"It's my fault. I guess I have no sense of style. I thought it was chic, but it seems Catherine didn't like such a subdued color."
Looking at the high-end store box spilling out of the knocked-over trash, Robert had a shocked expression on his face. Then, addressing me, he said clearly, "I don't know what has happened between you and Lucy until now. But throwing away a gift right in front of her? That's low. Apologize to Lucy." Lucy immediately resorted to fake tears.
"It's okay, I should have asked Catherine about her preferences before choosing. They say new moms can be emotionally unstable. Please, don't be hard on her."
"Lucy, you're too nice," Robert remarked, genuinely moved by Lucy's words. He then turned to me with a lecturing tone. "Catherine, she's saying this for your sake. Let's cool down and apologize together later." Unable to hold back anymore, I mustered a voice. "Did you check the contents properly?" "What?" Robert glanced at the trash can, puzzled. He slowly approached it and began to stack the protruding gift boxes. Just then, Lucy cried out in panic and was like,
"No!"
Trying to cover her tracks, she hastily explained.
"The gift I gave Catherine was so poorly received. I'm too embarrassed to show it. Just give it back, and I'll take it home."
Lucy tried to snatch the box, but Robert was faster than her to it and opened the present. The next moment, the expressions of every adult in the room froze. "What's this?" From my angle, all I could see was the back of Robert's ear and neck. I could tell that the back of his ear and neck were turning bright red in no time.
"Lucy, can you explain this? What's going on?"
It was the first and last time I ever heard the mild-mannered Robert raise his voice.
"This is something a mother would typically use, you know."
My mother-in-law cast a stern look at Lucy, who was still feigning tears.
"Lucy, you knew Catherine wasn't breastfeeding, right? You were there when Catherine explained it. So why would you give this as a baby gift?"
My mother-in-law then spread out the contents of the box for all to see. It was a high-end charcoal-colored nursing cover.
"This isn't about the color or the design,"
Robert said, glaring at Lucy as if she were gum stuck to the bottom of his shoe.
"Hey Lucy. You knew how self-conscious Catherine was about not breastfeeding. You were the one who told her that it doesn't matter whether she breastfeeds or formula feeds. So why did you gift something that targets her insecurities?"
My mother-in-law looked at Lucy in disbelief.
"Lucy, have you been harassing Catherine like this on several occasions?"
Upon hearing these words from my mother-in-law, Robert looked startled.
"Come to think of it, that day when you cried recently must have been because of something like this. I had a hunch something happened but never confronted it. Catherine, have you been constantly harassed by Lucy?"
I thought about revealing everything Lucy had done to me right then and there. I must have endured so much pain and hardship all this time. I probably shed tears when no one was looking. But, overwhelmed by emotion, I couldn't find the right words and could only nod in agreement. My mother-in-law, with a tone firmer than usual, declared,
"I don't want to see your face anymore. Leave now and you don't need to visit this house again."
Lucy's lips curled into a smirk while she continued her fake crying. She shot me a triumphant glance for a split second and then quickly resumed her act.
"Come on Mom, Catherine's a new mother. If you abandon her, what's gonna happen to the baby? I've seen news about single moms struggling. For the baby's sake, please bear with it. Please forgive Catherine."
With tears in her eyes, Lucy appealed, but my mother-in-law shot her a cold look.
"I wasn't speaking to Catherine. I was speaking to you. Please leave now."
Then, Lucy forgot to fake her tears and her eyes widened in shock. Suddenly, her face turned serious and she blurted out in a frantic voice.
"Huh? Mom, what are you saying? You're choosing this bad wife over me?"
My mother-in-law, with a somber look, responded.
"I thought you were my pride and joy. Educated, beautiful, kind-hearted. I had no idea you had such a malicious side. I'm ashamed I didn't notice sooner. I don't want to see you anymore. Please stay away from this house for a while."
Flustered, Lucy turned to Robert and was like,
"Don't you think she's being too harsh?"
But Robert, even angrier than my mother-in-law, retorted to her.
"Do you even understand what you've done? Not a single apology, huh? I've made up my mind. I'm cutting ties with you. I won't see you ever again."
After slamming this decision on Lucy, Robert turned to me and apologized.
"I knew you had problems, Catherine. I thought it wasn't my place to intervene, and as a result, I made you suffer. I failed as a husband. Please forgive me."
Then my mother-in-law also apologized to me.
"I was blinded by my love for my daughter. Even back then, I should have known that someone as considerate and hardworking as Catherine wouldn't say those things to Lucy. I regret not realizing it sooner. I'm truly sorry."
They both genuinely understood my unspeakable feelings. On top of that, they've accepted me. I was so happy about that, I couldn't help but shed tears.
"Please don't be sorry. I've always been grateful for your kindness."
Suddenly, Lucy, looking irritated, interrupted. She must have realized her act wasn't working anymore.
"Hey! What's this, playing happy families? There's a woman here who's not part of the family, right? You're seriously gonna believe her and kick me out?"
So Robert and Catherine gave Lucy a cold look and simultaneously said,
"Lucy, you're still here? I thought you had left. When are you leaving?"
Lucy, shaking with anger, shouted at Tom, was like,
"Enough! I don't know these people. Tom, let's go!"
and began walking towards the door. Tom, who had been silently watching the whole scene, finally spoke.
"You finally showed your true colors. I've made up my mind.
Lucy, let's get a divorce.
Wait a minute, Tom, what are you talking about?
Tom calmly replied to Lucy, who had turned pale and was freaking out. I've been getting complaints from the neighbors. They say that an obsessive fan's wife is causing trouble. Lucy, who lives in an upscale condo, apparently invites the neighborhood ladies for home parties. After forming a close-knit group, she'd select the most passive person and together with the group, they would ignore or gossip about that person. Tom initially didn't take these complaints seriously. He couldn't believe his wife would do such things. But one day, he witnessed the exclusion firsthand. I've told you to stop it many times. But you always play dumb and eventually start crying, so we can't have a proper conversation. You always act like the perfect wife in front of me, which made it hard for me to decide, but this is the last straw. Tom apologized to us. I'm sorry for ruining this special day. Given the circumstances, I'll be leaving. With that, he walked towards the entrance. Lucy, in a state of hysteria, chased after him. If Tom left her, Lucy would lose her wealth, status, and reputation.
Out of the blue, you're talking about divorce? What am I supposed to do now? After everything I've done for you, you're just gonna dump me? You heartless jerk! You monster!
As I listened to Lucy's fading angry shouts, a feeling of exhilaration began to spread in my heart. It felt as if the fog that had always clouded my mind suddenly cleared, revealing a vast blue sky. For a while after that, Lucy kept trying to contact my mother-in-law and Robert through calls and emails. Insisting she wasn't in the wrong, they decided to completely ignore her. Then, I started receiving long resentful emails from her. But I wasn't scared of Lucy anymore. I briefly reported to Robert and promptly added Lucy's email address to the spam folder. It seems Lucy got a good scolding from Robert. As time went on, Lucy stopped reaching out to my mother-in-law and Robert. Half a year later, I stumbled upon an ad on a website for a luxury condo unit that Lucy used to live in. Rumor has it that Lucy and Tom did indeed divorce. Lucy put up quite a fight, but it later came out that she had been unfaithful, leading Tom to leave her and finalize the divorce. A year later, a moving truck arrived at the mother-in-law's house, which had undergone extensive renovations. Robert and I began unboxing and storing the items brought in. From today, our family is gonna live with my mother-in-law for real. My mother-in-law, who now requires regular medical checkups, initially hesitated, but I asked her to let us repay the kindness she showed us after childbirth, and it became a reality. My mother-in-law, who had already given up her driver's license, kept thanking us. Though I felt like I should be the one saying thank you. Our baby, who had recently started walking, toddled around the spacious room. He's at that age where just walking is a thrill. Following our son, my mother-in-law smiled and walked behind him. This is our new home. In front of this heartwarming scene, Robert whispered to me. I nodded in response. Let's keep this happy family going. The picturesque scene I had always dreamt of since my childhood was now a reality right in front of my eyes.